And our last panel discussion for today will be on accessibility in action. And I would like to invite Sarah Schleuning. I cannot see. She's the Margot B. Perot Senior Curator of Decorative Arts and Design at the Dallas Museum of Art. Paraskevi Salavgia, she's the creator of self-help documentary Two Sides of the Same World, and she's a disability counselor. And Roxanne Giampapa, who's a head of school at Pinewood American International School and vice president of the International School of Anatolia College. The discussion will be moderated by Angelos Vassos, thank you, who's the director of Now Creativity Platform. So, the floor is yours.
It is always interesting when you're the last panel on a 3-day conference. And given the fact that we are almost an hour off schedule, we'll try to help Mrs. Handaka to stick to her decision to keep it as tight as possible. So we will try to keep it as tight and as interesting, hopefully, for you. Our issue, our topic is accessibility in action, which to me is the very essence of justice and democracy. One thing is to make a beautiful museum. The content plays all the role. But again, you need to keep that thing accessible to people. You don't make it for yourself. Actually, you create a museum in order to have visitors to come and share the experience with you. Hopefully, we will be able to have some insight, interesting insight, from our guests to this panel, which are Mrs. Sarah Schleuning, the Margot P. Perot Senior Curator of Decorative Arts and Design from Dallas Museum in the U.S. Thank you very much for having us here. Mrs. Paraskevi Salavgia. It will be a bilingual panel. Ms. Salavgia will talk in Greek, so keep your headsets handy. It will be helpful. Ms. Salavgia is the creator of self-help documentary Two Sides of the Same World and a disability counselor. And Ms. Roxanne Giampapa, you're the head of school. She's the head of school of Pinewood American International School and the vice president of the International School of Anatolia College. Thank you very much. I would like to start with a question. We have a mixed, let's say, panel. Two of you are from the institutional side, museums and schools. Ms. Salavgia is from the end user side. She's the person who will visit the museum and live the experience. Let me start with you, ladies, first, from the institutional side. I would like to ask you, are there any guidelines or principles a museum, an institution can follow in order to make the experience more inclusive for everyone, regardless of national or regional or whatever other aspects of his life?
Thank you, and thank you all for being here. So Pinewood is an American international school, and we have about 45 different nationalities in the school, coming from a broad range of places around the world. So this question is so relevant for us because the very essence of our mission is inclusion. And so the most important principle, I would say, is related to the universal design principle. So if you take the universal design principle in other fields like architecture, let's say, you know that building a building to suit every user, and oftentimes that means those users on the margins, it will benefit everyone. For example, a ramp. A ramp is a wonderful example in a building that supports, of course, persons in wheelchairs, but it also supports people who have strollers, or if you are have a broken leg, or you have a bicycle that you're taking up or down. So it's the same principle that we use at Pinewood, and that is universal design for learning. And this is a principle that tries to minimize barriers, and that's the key, minimizing barriers so that everyone has access. There are 3 different components. It has to do with the idea of engagement, which is the how of learning, how children get their feet into the learning, representation, which is the what of learning, and then action and expression, which is the how of learning. And for each of these different levels, we want to provide multiple means there, multiple means of expression, multiple means of representation, multiple means of action. This is the way that we make things much more accessible. Of course, an accessible classroom is quite important as well, but really true universal design, so making sure that everyone has access, really does require intentional design. We cannot say, we're universal and we have full access because we have 45 nationalities in the school. It doesn't work that way. It can't just be. It has to be very intentional. And it also takes a lot of time, it takes dedication, and most importantly, it takes accountability. You have to be able to reflect on your own institution and say, what are we doing well? What are we not doing well? And there are lots of things that we do well and lots of things that we don't do well. And then being able to go through that and go back to the drawing board, but always having that breaking barriers as the means.
Actually, from what you're saying, it's an ongoing procedure which never ends. You always try and fail and get better, hopefully, every time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
In an educational institution environment, in a museum environment?
Well, I was going to say too, I love all that you said about universal design, but I think for me, my universal principle is that we will never do enough, and we, sort of what you're saying. It's like the goal, I think, is to be uncomfortable, to be comfortable being uncomfortable. That there is always a lot to learn. There are so many disabilities that are also invisible, that, and the most important thing I think we can do as an institution is to constantly audit and assess what you are doing. Listen to whether you are doing enough, what you can change, and that is not only for your visitors, but for your staff, because that is often what is forgotten. And what I've kind of been discovering is we are so sort of visitor-centric that you forget who are the teams that also work with you, and are you dealing with that as well? But I really just think listening and trying to do more, because it is a constant.
I believe it must be the same both in the US and in Greece. Are there any budget restraints or maybe staff restraints that prevent you from doing every time the best you can?
I'll take that one, because I love to talk about money.
Or the lack of it.
Well, I always joke that I'm a spender because I'm a curator. But I think that what is amazing to me is what can be done with very little. And I think the biggest thing, this is why I'm a big believer in like audits and evaluations and these kinds of things, because going out with a plan and trying to fund with a plan is very different than just saying, we know we're not doing enough. And so I encourage people to really take action. If you, I mean, I did this within my own institution. I didn't see that we were doing it, and so we formed our own internal task force. We met for about 6 months, and we just audited internally, and we made a giant Excel spreadsheet that were issues and what we sort of felt was a potential timeline, cost, and they were everything from the elevator keeps breaking to really pie in the sky. And it's everything from digital, what are you doing? I mean, I noticed like this, we're not closed caption. There's always things that we can be doing to be better. And I think we made that list and we sort of presented it and said, this is an ongoing growing list, but these are ways that we could try, and how do you try and fund those? And what are things that can be built in to projects you're already doing? That's not really an answer, but it's about being crafty and trying to find ways that it can work in the budget. And I think these conversations we had earlier today about sort of that moral document and sort of like how do you ingrain that in the DNA of the institution, that this is all everyone's responsibility and we all need to kind of work together to find solutions and paths.
I cannot assess whether it's an answer or not, but let me tell you, it's really the essence of what we're all trying to do these days. Do more with less and try to evaluate ourselves on a constant basis, day in, day out. And hopefully we succeed, more or less. I would like to make a pause from your side and turn to Paraskevi, because he has a very different aspect, a very different point of view. And we will talk in Greek. Paraskevi, θα μιλήσουμε στα ελληνικά. Είναι εξαιρετικά ενδιαφέρον και έχει μεγάλη σημασία για μας να μας δώσεις λίγο μία αίσθηση. Εμείς τα συζητάμε από μία πλευρά, είτε την πλευρά των ιδρυμάτων, είτε την πλευρά του επισκέπτη, αλλά από μία σχετική ασφάλεια που μας δίνει η θέση μας. Έχει πολύ μεγάλη σημασία να δούμε τη δική σου εμπειρία, πώς βιώνει ένας άνθρωπος σαν και εσένα την επίσκεψη σε ένα τέτοιο ίδρυμα. Τι επιπλέον προκλήσεις έχει?
Καλησπέρα. Καταρχάς, να γνωριστώ. Είμαι η Σαλαβιά Παρασκευή. Είμαι η δημιουργός της ταινίας «Ένας κόσμος, δύο όψεις», που στόχο έχει να ευαισθητοποιήσει στη λεγόμενη αόρατη αναπηρία. Έχω γεννηθεί 5,5 μηνών, 995 γραμμάρια, σαν 3 ντομάτες. Σκεφτείτε 3 ντομάτες. Έμεινα λοιπόν στην εντατική και στην τρίτη μέρα της νοσηλείας μου έμεινα χωρίς οξυγόνο. Ξεχάστηκε το σωληνάκι που μου παρέχει οξυγόνο. Αυτό λοιπόν δημιούργησε κίστες στον εγκεφαλό μου, ουσιαστικά ένα κενό, το οποίο με τα χρόνια απορροφήθηκε, αλλά παρέμεινε η βλάβη της εγκεφαλικής παράλυσης και της αριστερής ημιπληγίας, η οποία δημιουργεί κάποια κινητικά θέματα, αλλά στο τμήμα του εγκεφάλου που έχει υποστεί βλάβη δημιουργεί μαθησιακές δυσκολίες και δεν μου επιτρέπει να μάθω ξένες γλώσσες, οπότε δεν κατάφερα να μάθω αγγλικά. Λοιπόν, μισό λεπτό. Ωραία. Παρ' όλα αυτά, το ότι δεν μπόρεσα να μάθω αγγλικά δεν με εμπόδισε στο να πάω σε ένα σχολείο το οποίο ασχολούταν με καλλιτεχνικά. Ασχολούμασταν με το θέατρο, τον κινηματογράφο, το χορό, τα εικαστικά. Περνούσαμε με εξετάσεις στο καλλιτεχνικό. Και έπειτα να μπω στο πανεπιστήμιο και να σπουδάσω φιλοσοφία και παιδαγωγική στο Αριστοτέλειο Πανεπιστήμιο Θεσσαλονίκης. Και παίρνοντας το πτυχίο μου να ασχοληθώ με τη συμβουλευτική ατόμων με αναπηρία, το μεταπτυχιακό μου. Τώρα, ο στόχος της ταινίας, γιατί μέσα από βιωματικά γεγονότα δημιουργήθηκε η ταινία, ξέρετε, είναι πάρα πολύ εύκολο να δώσεις βοήθεια σε έναν άνθρωπο που η αναπηρία του είναι ορατή, αλλά τι συμβαίνει με έναν άνθρωπο που η αναπηρία του δεν φαίνεται. Και ξέρετε, τουλάχιστον εμείς εδώ στην Ελλάδα έχουμε και αυτό το στερεοτυπικό του «Μα πώς είναι δυνατόν να έχεις μία αναπηρία αφού είσαι μία κούκλα». Οπότε,
Πού είσαι, Βασίλη Παρασκευή?
ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ παρόλα αυτά. Παρ' όλα αυτά, προσπαθώ να ευαισθητοποιήσω στον κόσμο ότι το να είσαι εμφανισιακά όμορφος δεν σημαίνει ότι η αναπηρία σου δια μαγείας εξαφανίζεται. Και έτσι το ντοκιμαντέρ μου έχει στόχο να ευαισθητοποιήσει και να σπάσει τα στερεότυπα.
Παρά τα αυτά, δεν σε εμπόδισε καθόλου και σε καλλιτεχνικό σχόλιο να πας. Αυτή η κλίση που είχες και η αγάπη για την τέχνη βγήκε και άνθησε. Σε σχέση με έναν χώρο όπως ένα μουσείο, πώς σε επηρεάζει?
Σε ένα χώρο όπως είναι το μουσείο, ας ξεκινήσουμε με τα μουσεία της Ελλάδας και έπειτα του εξωτερικού. Νομίζω ότι το μεγαλύτερο μου ζήτημα είναι ότι τα μουσεία της Ελλάδος δεν έχουν ανθρώπους, ξεναγούς, που να γνωρίζουν από ειδική αγωγή και να μπορούν να με κατατοπίσουν έτσι ώστε να μου εξηγήσουν με απλά λόγια, χωρίς περαιτέρω πληροφορίες που δεν θα ήταν εφικτό να τις συγκρατήσω, τα εκθέματα. Δεν έχουμε ένα προσωπικό το οποίο είναι εξειδικευμένο έτσι ώστε να μου χαρίσει μια πιο ευχάριστη ξενάγηση στα μουσεία. Και επίσης κάτι το οποίο μου δημιουργεί κούραση είναι το ότι είναι πολύ μεγάλα, σχεδόν τα περισσότερα, και δεν έχουν χώρους να αυτοαποστάσω. Δεν έχουν χώρους να καθίσω. Οπότε εμένα αυτό με κουράζει και σωματικά, αλλά και πνευματικά, διανοητικά. Δεν μπορώ να συγκρατήσω όγκο πληροφοριών χωρίς να κάνω μία παύση.
Με γκρινιάζουμε εμείς, Βασιλική, πολλές φορές Παρασκευή, με συγχωρείς, ότι δεν έχουμε κάποιο θερανείο για να καθίσουμε κάπου σε ένα μουσείο, σε μια επίσκεψη. Μπορώ μόνο να διανοηθώ πόσο πιο δύσκολο είναι για σένα αυτό και κάπου μας κάνει να αισθανόμαστε και λίγο αμήχανοι και λίγο άβολοι να γκρινιάζουμε εμείς για κάποια πράγματα από την ασφάλεια που μας δίνει η θέση μας. Τι θα ήθελες να αλλάξει λοιπόν στο μουσείο? Πρώτα απ' όλα λοιπόν πιο πολύ προσωπικό, το οποίο να είναι εξειδικευμένο για να μπορέσει να ανταπεξέλθει στις ανάγκες της ξενάγησης. Κάτι άλλο?
Νομίζω ότι αυτό, ανθρώπους. Γιατί, ξέρετε, θεωρώ πολύ σημαντικό να υπάρχει αγάπη και κατανόηση. Κάπως έτσι, όταν υπάρχουν αυτά, τα πράγματα λύνονται. Βέβαια, θέλω να σας πω την αλήθεια, επειδή συναναστρέφομαι και είμαι σύμβουλος σε ένα σύλλογο στο Μιλάμε για τον αυτισμό, με γονείς που έχουν παιδιά με αυτισμό, μου λένε ότι είναι απαγορευτικό να επισκεφτούν ένα μουσείο εκείνοι και τα παιδιά τους. Καθώς όλη αυτή η βαβούρα που υπάρχει από ανθρώπους και η μη γνώση δεν τους επιτρέπει να το επισκεφτούν με τα παιδιά τους.
Μπορεί ακόμη και να τους αποθεί, να τα καταστά το περιβάλλον αφιλόξενο.
Εντελώς.
Είπες για τα μουσεία της Ελλάδας. Έχεις κάποια διαφορετική εμπειρία? Δεν γνωρίζω αν έχεις πάει σε μουσεία εκτός Ελλάδας. Υπάρχει διαφορετική εικόνα εκεί?
Ναι, βέβαια. Να σας πω την αλήθεια ότι άμα δεν είχα την αδερφή μου ή φίλους επισκεπτόμενοι τα μουσεία στο εξωτερικό, δεν θα μπορούσα πάλι να τα επισκεφτώ, γιατί και εκεί πέρα με εμποδίζει το θέμα της μετάφρασης. Ναι, το αντιλαμβάνομαι ότι τα αγγλικά είναι μια γλώσσα την οποία τη γνωρίζουν όλοι, αλλά εγώ δεν τη γνωρίζω. Και αυτό είναι ένας λόγος που με κρατάει στο περιθώριο από τα μουσεία. Καθώς, ξέρετε, υπάρχει μετάφραση μόνο στα αγγλικά για τους ξένους ανθρώπους, οπότε δεν υπάρχει στα ελληνικά. Και εγώ δυσκολεύομαι να επισκεφτώ τα μουσεία εκεί. Γιατί και δεν έχω άνθρωπο να μου τα εξηγήσει και δεν υπάρχει και κάποιος που να μπορεί να μου τα μεταφράσει έτσι ώστε να το απολαύσω αυτό. Δηλαδή, αυτό που συμβαίνει τώρα με τα ακουστικά είναι πολύ ανακουφιστικό για μένα. Γιατί είναι κάτι το οποίο η κυρία μιλάει αργά, οπότε όλες τις πληροφορίες έχω το χρόνο να τις εξεργαστώ, να τις αφουγκραστώ και να τις κάνω δικές μου. Νομίζω ότι είναι πολύ σημαντικός παράγοντας αυτό για μένα.
Absolutely, it gives me the best chance to ask you something about that. We are talking about how you need always to rethink and realign what you do concerning your audience. I was wondering, who are you really asking? I mean, when we try to make some changes in the way the museum works, who's the person you're asking? Are you always have the chance to talk to the right person in order to get the right feedback on what needs to be done, what needs to change, what needs to be added, or what needs to be altered?
Thank you. First, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story, because I think that's what's so important is listening and really being open to hearing what people say. I'm sorry, I'm getting like emotional, but I have a son who has neurological disorders, and I understand that museums are really complicated spaces to go into, and so one of the reasons I was invited to be here was I did an exhibition and a big project really looking at neurodiversity and how to really be more inviting and inclusive for that. And I was just really happy because a lot of the things that came out of that project are just the things that you're talking about trying to create sort of spaces throughout the museum that are consistent, that allow people to relax, to basically de-escalate is sort of the term we use for it, but to really recenter yourself, we're really trying to provide like noise canceling headphones and things that allow you to be in the museum without listening to all the distraction and the sounds. And then one of the things I'm really interested in experimenting with within the museum is not using as much words to describe things, but I'm sorry, I'm crying. But graphics and text. But I think I think what we all want is everybody to have the opportunity to experience the works in the ways that they want to and they feel comfortable. So I really want to thank you.
You know, the thing is that it was said before, and it was quite right, that museums are not about the past, it's about the present. Most importantly, maybe it's something made of people, of humans, destined to be for humans. We need to have always the human aspect in mind when we make something like that. Sometimes we tend to lose that. Thank you very much for saying that. Given the fact that there are still some handicaps in the way we organize museums, are you can you foresee any trends or any technological evolutions that will come in the near future and will change the way we approach museums, maybe through virtual reality, maybe by some means we don't see yet, but could help someone like Paraskevi experience a visit in a museum in a more holistic and more inclusive way?
If I could jump in and talk about that. First of all, I too want to thank you, Paraskevi, for being here and sharing your story, because for those of us who are educators in the field and really trying to meet the needs of the diverse population, hearing personal stories really makes a huge difference. And I'm really so, it's hard to find the right word, but I'm hopeful in hearing this story and hearing you talk about the museums and what they're trying to do in terms of neurodiversity, because as a school, and all schools, not just Pinewood, our schools have incredible neurodiversity needs throughout. And really what we have come to understand is that there aren't really special needs. There are just different ways of learning. And one person's way of learning and taking information in is very different from someone else's. They're almost as different as our fingerprints. And so knowing that cultural institutions are really paying attention to this, because this is a lot of the work that we're doing in school to support students to be able to, be able to go into the world and have full access to everything. And so understanding what those different needs are really is invaluable.
It's exactly what you said. It's not about special needs. It's about needs. Everyone is special. Every one of us is special. So everyone's needs are special. You don't need to separate these two.
I will say that technology is making huge breakthroughs too, in terms of assistive technology that supports for translation and on-demand translation and things like this, virtual reality, being able to bring you into an experience, and for all sorts of users. I think that there is some excitement around artificial intelligence that we can hope in the near future to be able to capitalize on.
I think the other thing I would say, though, which is a little in opposition with that, is I think there's something incredible about simplicity. We were at the Socratic Museum yesterday, and they were showing us some of the objects they had that you could touch. And one of the things that I thought was so magical about it was they were made of marble. And typically you go and people 3D print, and we're all so excited about new technology and all this stuff, but to hold it and feel the coldness and the heft of the marble was part of the sensation. It was part of the experience, and I thought that was just really incredible. So I think as much as technology can be really helpful, and there are really great ways, I also think it's the constant finding out from individuals what they want and what is the experience they want to get, and what you can do to bring that. But sometimes just touching the materiality of things or things like that can be really what can transport that experience. It could be both. It could, yes, and, I guess.
Maybe exactly what you said. It's exactly what thinking out of the box means. I mean, sometimes technology can be a trap because you tend to think that the only way is that way. Actually, what you experienced is not a technology, it's a step back. Yet it's so modern and contemporary, so it wouldn't change, you wouldn't leave it like that for any technology in the world. Are there other ways you can collaborate more with local communities or with different groups? Let's say disability advocacy groups, in order to make your institutions more accessible? I mean, ways we haven't tried yet. Okay, I take that back.
Sorry. I will say that in this project that I did, one of the things I had been finding, I specialize in design, and most designers, when you tell them, okay, we need to make a project accessible, they think mobility, right? And they're very excited about it. And, yeah, and so I think, so what we did was we brought together a bunch of designers and the museum staff, and I gathered a group of specialists who dealt with communication disorders, neuroplasticity, and some were really practitioners, some were really theoreticians. And the idea was just to have discussions and start really talking about what is this bigger spectrum of disability and these different ideas, and really educate ourselves. And then we constantly draw on those people now to really come and assess. And some things are so simple that I couldn't believe it. Like, I was talking to one of them and they were saying, well, you should check for color blindness, and you just take your phone out and you put it on grayscale and you take a picture, and that's the way you can tell if there's enough contrast. I mean, how simple is that? And I was like, oh, that's free, that's super simple. And yet we'd walk around the museum and realize how much was not in that spectrum. So it was there's really great, helpful things to find out.
I would really like, we have 10 more minutes, to give some time to the audience, whether they have any questions, to have some time for them as well. Is there anyone who has a question to ask? That means that two things. We're either very informative or very dull. Yes, please, the lady.
Ήθελα απλά να ρωτήσω αν αυτό το έργο που έχει κάνει η κυρία Σάρα μπορούμε και εμείς να το δούμε, με κάποιον τρόπο να το μάθουμε, να δούμε πώς γίνεται. Δηλαδή, τι ακριβώς είδαν και έμαθαν μέσα σε αυτό το project που έκανε. Ναι. Αν υπάρχει κάπου, θέλω να πω, στο ίντερνετ. Sorry.
Yes. Sorry, super loud. I'm so excited. You want to know? So we actually, there's actually 2 publications, and you can go online. So if you go to Speechless, is the title of the exhibition. It's speechless.dma.org. There's a virtual tour of the exhibition that we did. We did a book that was really about the kind of leading up to the process. And then we did a really rigorous evaluation, really to understand and assess what worked and what didn't. And we published, and this second publication is on this link, is an e-publication that was both the evaluation, the larger project, and then a lot of, it's vaguely a manifesto, but a lot of kind of findings of sort of what I was saying, of these things that I was really sort of encouraging institutions to sort of, to make more de-escalation spaces, to also build in their budgets opportunities to be iterative, to when you discover something in your permanent collection or your installation isn't working, do you have a little money to be able to fix it? Because often that's what happens, is like, no, you don't. So how can you build little think tank money to say, hey, we want to try this little initiative, can we try it? And can we find that can there be a little pocket of money built in? I think one of the other things that I really encourage, beyond evaluations and listening and communicating and trying to learn from your audiences, but is about is being really transparent of when you fail. That's why I like being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's part of what I wanted to do in this publication. So we talk a lot about what we didn't do right and where we want to be better, and where, because that's, I wanted, when you experiment, you want people to learn from what you learned and then try and move it forward. Because in my mind, everything you do in a museum should be a sketch of the idea, and you should be building off that and learning from it. And every time I try and do something, I'm trying to push myself to what could I do more? What could I try differently? And how could that then, what do I learn from that? And how could that affect change? So, and that's really, just to throw a plug to this conference, this is the power of these conferences, because again, you're able to share out and learn and continue to sort of continue that dialogue so that we can all collectively grow.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Do we have any other questions? Maybe someone? Or any online questions, maybe?
Ναι, ευχαριστώ πολύ. Μία ερώτηση για την Παρασκευή, για την κυρία Σαλάβια. Ναι, συγγνώμη. Η ερώτηση πάει ίσως πέρα από τα μουσεία και τον πολιτιστικό χώρο και τη θεματική μας σήμερα, αλλά καθώς συμβουλεύετε και άλλα άτομα με αναπηρίες, με διαφορετικές αναπηρίες, ποιες είναι κάποιες από τις συμβουλές που δίνετε σε αυτά, για το πώς θα προσεγγίσουν τον πολιτισμό και ως καλλιτέχνης εσείς, ή πώς θα προσεγγίσουν τη ζωή τους, πώς τα ίδια θα προσεγγίσουν τον κόσμο. Και από την άλλη μεριά, ποιες είναι οι συμβουλές που δίνετε ευρύτερα στην κοινωνία και στους κοινωνικούς φορείς που συνεργάζεστε για το πώς θα συμπεριλάβουν τα άτομα με αναπηρία με καλύτερο τρόπο.
Αν μου επιτρέπετε μία προσθήκη στην ερώτηση. Παρασκευή, σε πλησίασαν ποτέ από κάποιο μουσείο για να ρωτήσουν τη γνώμη σου για το τι θα έπρεπε να αλλάξουν?
Ναι, ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ για την ερώτηση. Να απαντήσω πρώτα στην ερώτηση της κυρίας και έπειτα στη δική σας. Νομίζω ότι θα απαντήσω πρώτα στο πρώτο σκέλος και αν δεν θυμάμαι καλά το δεύτερο σκέλος, να μου την ξανακάνετε την ερώτηση. Αυτό που λέω στους ανθρώπους που με πλησιάζουν για να κάνουμε συμβουλευτική είναι ότι το πιο σημαντικό σε όλη αυτή τη διαδικασία είναι η αποδοχή. Η αποδοχή της αναπηρίας τους, έτσι ώστε, γιατί εγώ η αλήθεια είναι ότι είμαι ένα βήμα πριν και συνεργάζομαι με ανθρώπους που δεν έχουν αποδεχτεί την αναπηρία τους και δεν βγαίνουν καν από το σπίτι τους για να επισκεφτούν μουσεία. Οπότε, σταδιακά, βήμα-βήμα, προσπαθούμε να καλλιεργήσουμε πρώτα την αποδοχή για όλο αυτό που τους συμβαίνει, την αγάπη αλλά και τον αυτοσεβασμό, έτσι ώστε να κάνουν το βήμα και να τολμήσουν να επισκεφτούν ένα μουσείο. Τώρα, όσο αναφορά τους φορείς, θα ήθελα να μου ξανακάνετε το δεύτερο σκέλος της ερώτησής σας, αν είναι εφικτό.
Βεβαίως, πέρα από τις συμβουλές λοιπόν που εσείς δίνετε στους ανθρώπους με αναπηρία, ποιες συμβουλές δίνετε εσείς σε φορείς κοινωνικούς με τους οποίους συνεργάζεστε για το πώς θα κάνουν γενικότερα τις πόλεις μας, τις κοινωνίες μας, συγκεκριμένες δράσεις πιο προσβάσιμες. Πέρα από τα μουσεία δηλαδή που αναφερθήκατε πριν, ως προς τις συλλογές ή μια επίσκεψη.
Ωραία, ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ που την επαναλάβατε. Να αποκτήσουν γνώση πάνω στο αντικείμενο. Να αποκτήσουν γνώση, αλλά και παράλληλα να έχουν και οι ίδιοι άνθρωποι αγάπη και κατανόηση. Θεωρώ πάρα πολύ σημαντικά συστατικά στη ζωή μας αυτές τις αξίες. Για όλους τους ανθρώπους, είτε με αναπηρία είτε χωρίς αναπηρία. Θέλετε να μου επαναλάβετε και τη δική σας ερώτηση?
Με μεγάλη χαρά. Ήθελα να σε ρωτήσω αν υπήρξαν μουσεία τα οποία να σε προσέγγισαν και να ζητήσουν κάποια συμβουλή ή κάποια γνώμη για το τι θα έπρεπε να αλλάξουν ώστε να είναι πιο προσβάσιμο.
Όχι. Η αλήθεια είναι πως δεν με έχουν πλησιάσει ακόμη, αλλά ανυπομονώ με μεγάλη χαρά να μου κάνουν αυτή την πρόταση και να ζητήσω τη συμβουλή μου.
Τη στιγμή νομίζω που είναι και online και να μεταδίδεται το συνέδριο, είναι μια καλή ευκαιρία να το ακούσουν και τα σωστά αυτιά.
Ναι.
We have three amazing ladies with us, and you were certainly last, but certainly not least.
Ναι.
Thank you so very much for being us with us.
Thank you. Shall we close or shall I have another question? Γιατί καταρχάς και εγώ ήθελα να πω ότι... μιλάνε. Να συνεχίσουμε λίγο. Συγγνώμη. Ήθελα να πω ότι η κατάθεση της κυρίας Σαλαβιά είναι ουσιαστικά η καλύτερη αρχή μιας συμβουλής, γιατί δεν είναι μόνο δύο κουβέντες, είναι μια ολόκληρη εμπειρία το πώς, τι χρειάζεται να αλλάξει. Δηλαδή από τις λεζάντες και τα πρακτικά, να το πω έτσι, τη σηματοδότηση μέσα στο μουσείο, μέχρι άλλα στοιχεία, μέχρι να υπάρχουν χώροι ηρεμίας, ησυχίας, ξεκούρασης. Άρα είναι ένας ολόκληρος στρατηγικός ανασχεδιασμός και σας το λέω γιατί μας πρέπει να αρχίσετε ήδη να το σχεδιάζετε. Αυτό που λέτε, που φαντάζομαι είναι η δική σας προσωπική εμπειρία και ενσωμάτωση αυτού που νιώθετε στο μουσείο, να το κάνετε ένα set of guidelines, μια σειρά από οδηγίες καταρχάς και να το πουλάτε κιόλας. Δηλαδή, ναι. Αυτό θέλω να πω όσον αφορά όλα τα στάδια της εμπειρίας που λέμε μέσα σε ένα μουσείο. Και ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ. Γι' αυτό εμένα μου έβαλε ήδη πάρα πολλές σκέψεις. Μάλιστα. Να κάνω έχω και μία ερώτηση. Θα σας δώσουμε, θέλετε το λόγο. Ναι.
Ευχαριστώ. Χαίρετε. Είμαι η μητέρα της Παρασκευής. Σας καλησπερίζω. Θα ήθελα να πω ότι το Μουσείο Μακεδονικού Αγώνα έχει καλέσει αύριο την Παρασκευή, ακριβώς για αυτά τα νέα project που θα γίνουν το 2024 και τη θέλει αρρωγό της. Όφιλα να το επικοινωνήσω.
Καλά κάνετε.
Ναι.
Ναι.
Να είστε καλά, σας ευχαριστούμε.
Ευχαριστούμε πολύ. Είναι μια αρχή πολύ σημαντική. Πάρα πολύ σημαντική.
Και γι' αυτό υπάρχουν οι μαμάδες, για να μας θυμίζουν αυτά που ξεχνάμε.
Ακριβώς, ναι.
Υπάρχουν για να τις χαρούμε για τις πολύ καλές κόρες που έχουν βγάλει. Και η μία κόρη και η άλλη.
Ναι. I'll switch to English for one last question that relates, and it's whether... No. For museums, but also for other institutions, public institutions, how can collaboration between different professionals, healthcare professionals, and museum experts be effectively facilitated to identify, create, and support spaces of rest within museums? And basically, whether, for example, in a museum or in a school, or as a freelancer, do you work collaboratively to create such spaces with different expertises?
Yes.
For example, yes, for sure, for sure.
Yes.
No,
I mean, I think you cannot do this work alone. And I think if you think you can, then you should not. You are not the right person. So I really think that we have to learn from each other, and that, you know, the biggest mistake is to assume that an institution is a monolith, that the visitors are, that we all need to kind of work together. So I always invite it, and I think it's good to have people question your assumptions, and for you to test and rethink and see what works and what doesn't, because it should evolve. That's why I'm like, build your budgets so you pad them to be able to change out things, because that I think also happens so much. You think it's a great idea, and you put it up, and you realize you totally forgot something, and it's so obvious once people start using it, and then you're out of money and like people, and you can't fix it.
And I would also say yes. We cannot, live without really collaborating with our community and doing, just something like this and meeting Paraskevi. I told her she's really the embodiment of what we are trying to do with the incredible agency that she comes to the stage with eloquence in her communication. These are they're not soft skills anymore, they're core skills. These are the core skills that we're trying to instill in our students, and we certainly can't do it alone. And we're always learning. We're always learning everywhere we go. We can never think that we're doing it right, and so we're good to go. We always have to think, where are we not doing it right? And that involves so many different voices, and we have to listen to those voices.
It's interesting that the last panel concludes that it never ends.
Never ends, never ends. We don't want you to go. Thank you. Well, if we don't have any questions, we will close by saying first, because you asked Sarah that on Wednesday she did give a keynote on Speechless, on this exhibition that she created, also mentioning the different expertises that were involved, from neuroscientists to museum designers. So this is an opportunity for us also to say that everything, today's live streaming and Wednesday's live streaming, will be subtitled, and then by January, let's hope, on our YouTube page, anybody can go back to listening again and again to all discussions that have happened. And this is very important as a learning process also. I want to thank you very much for being here.
Μικρόφωνο και περιμένω.
Δεν σας είδα. Έχω εδώ τα φώτα της... there's a question you want to... okay.
Paraskevi, this is for... may I speak in English? Is it okay? No, but this question... this is not a question. This is a commentary that I would like to make and eventually raise more comments about it. Θα μιλήσω στα ελληνικά. Η Παρασκευή ανέφερε κάτι πάρα πολύ σημαντικό, που είναι σημαντικό ακόμα και στις μεγάλες, σε όλες τις επιχειρήσεις, είναι το ανθρώπινο δυναμικό. Και στα μουσεία αυτό που ανέφερες είναι αυτό που λείπει, είναι το ανθρώπινο δυναμικό. Είναι μια παρατήρηση που την κάνουμε για τα... θα ήθελα να την αναφέρω για τα ελληνικά μουσεία ειδικά. Εγώ προσωπικά λέγομαι Ευστρατιάδου Φωτεινή και είμαι ιστορικός τέχνης μουσιολόγος και τα τελευταία 20 χρόνια στον ασφαλιστικό κλάδο. Έχω πολλούς συναδέλφους που στη διάρκεια της 20ης ετού καριέρας μου έχουν αλλάξει επάγγελμα, επειδή πολλοί άνθρωποι του κλάδου μου δεν έχουν βρει κάποιες διεξόδους επαγγελματικές στην Ελλάδα. Αντί γι' αυτό έχουμε μεγάλη ελλείψη ακόμα και σε ανθρώπινο δυναμικό που αφορά στη φύλαξη των μουσείων, πόσο μάλλον σε θέματα που έχουν να κάνουν με την ανάδειξη του μουσείου και τη διασύνδεσή του με την κοινωνία, ώστε να γίνει ακριβώς inclusive αυτό που θέλουμε. Αυτό που,
λίγο σύντομη παρακαλούμε,
ναι,
γιατί μας
αυτό
το
που,
ναι.
Ναι. Είναι μεγάλη λοιπόν η ευθύνη αυτών οι οποίοι είναι στα μουσεία να ανοίξουν προς το κοινό, αντί να το κάνουν dungeon, όπως λέμε, ένα κάστρο κλειστό, να δουν τρόπους με τους οποίους μπορεί να το διασυνδέσουν. Όταν εργάστηκα για τη δόμηση του Τελογλείου Ιδρύματος από εργοτάξιο, το ανοίξαμε στο κοινό. Είχα τότε έρθει σε επαφή με όλα τα τμήματα, για παράδειγμα, του Πανεπιστημίου και κάναμε ώστε να μπορέσουμε να καλλιεργήσουμε σχέσεις διάδρασης και με άλλα μουσεία του εξωτερικού, ακριβώς για να μπορέσουμε να τα ανοίξουμε και να δούμε πώς θα κατευθύνουμε στο μέλλον τις δράσεις του μουσείου.
Τελείωσε η μπαταρία μου.
Έχω μια πρόταση. I have a proposal. My proposal was idea. So, based on that idea, I'll continue in English. I really appreciated the Excel list that you mentioned earlier. It's very practical and it's very inclusive. And it relates to all the details related to absolutely everything that could possibly be out there that would involve the management of the museum. Now, you can extend that by inviting other specialists, whether they work for the museum or not, it doesn't matter, from all different fields and professions who are willing, either as a public service or professionally as consultants, to contribute to your lists and expand them in ways that will include things that you haven't even thought of. So that is my proposal for every single institution that is listening today.
Ευχαριστούμε. Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ. So I think it's the end for today and for this year. I want to thank you very much. This last panel was really eye-opening, and it's like the beginning. It's like, you know, when it's part two, the beginning of part two, what is to be awaited for. For people who are here, I'm reminding you that if you want to go down, I want to say all the thank you, but thank you to you. Just to remind you, there's two workshops for those who've registered. One is in CR1 room with Giovanna Brambilla on the witness stand, museum. Anatolia. CR2 with Giovanna Brambilla on the witness stand, museum, art, and restorative justice. And CR1 room, 3 modes of participation, collaborative exhibition projects at the Intercultural Museum in Oslo with Anders Betum, whose been with us since Wednesday. He was on discussions on Wednesday. He's from the Museum of Oslo. Now, before we close and before we leave, I want to say a few thank you to our all collaborators and partners here and in Athens for the whole production. First of all, to our partners, the U.S. Embassy in Greece. Thank you to the consul and the whole team, the British Council and the team. Very special thank to my partners, as we say in crime, Elena Alexaki from the U.S. Embassy, who's down here, and please a big clap to Eleni. Maria Papaioannou from the British Council. Katerina Guziouli, who came down from the shadows. She's our production manager, everybody. Tina Diora is over there. Chrysoula Melidou and Ioanna Koutsounnanou, the Thessaloniki team. This year's collaborators, the Royal Norwegian Embassy in Athens, and especially Christina Sordina and the non-profit Collectiva, and of course the Thessaloniki Concert Hall. There's a lot of thank you here for the President, Eugenia Alexandropoulou Egyptiadou, Christos Galileos, Prodromos Monastiridis, and Maria Rodokalaki for the whole support of the production, for hosting us, for being part of it. Our auspices, the Hellenic Ministry of Culture, the Municipality of Thessaloniki and of Athens, and ICOM Greece. Our sponsors for the whole event, Unisystems, as well as the official hospitality sponsors of the Benaki Museum, Kokomat, and the official air carriers that brought us here, Aegean Airlines, and a permanent communication sponsors. A few names of the people who supported the production, the interpreters, Fani Karamanoli and Fotini Apostolou. Our hands-up interpreters, Glikeria Gatsiou, Konstantina Papageorgiou, Andromachi Vlachou, and Nicoletta Papa. Production company, Live Media, especially Dora Anastasiadou, Andy Anastasiou, and Menela Grammatikopoulou. Eleni and Maria Spanou from White Design, who design and redesign our logo. Thank you for this year version. Our photographer here, Pavlos Makridis. Mr. Dovas for lighting. Mr. Triadaphilos Zachariadis for sound. These are people from Megaro, I understand. The ushers here are volunteers. Eleni from the Aristotelio University, I think. Eleni Anna Topalidou, Hara Natsou, Maria Tsibloudi, and Marina Ziavali I have. They have many names. And I think most of all our speakers who've traveled from many different parts of the world, and yourselves for being here still, although we are a bit late. Thank you very much, and see you in the next CoMuseum. Have a lovely evening.